apexanalytix. This case study will be focusing on developing agility to support the explosive shared services growth. So really keen to kind of hear about how Adidas is advancing their shared services journey and building business agility at the meantime. So yes, I'm delighted to introduce two speakers. Our first speaker will be Cristiana Rodrigues, who is the Director of Accounts Payable and T&E with Adidas. And also joining us, we have Phil Beane, who is the Senior VP for Global Field Operations with apexanalytix. So welcome, Phil, and welcome, Cristiana. And yes, I can let you guys get your session started.
Thank you very much. Go ahead, Phil.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
I think
guys?
we're on the right. Yes, we can hear you. I think we're also on the right right slide now.
Great. Phil, shall I just kick off, or do you want?
That'd be great. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, great. So thank you all for listening. Thank you for the invitation, especially to Phil from Apex. So they invited us to co-host here, and I'm very glad. It's a pleasure to be here. So we were partially introduced ourselves already, and it is a business case that we want to show. But before we go into that, I am here actually to explain you why it was needed. How did we get so big, and what happened amongst those last years? So first, a small introduction. So you know me now. I was introduced already. My name is Cristiana. I'm leading currently the Accounts Payable and Expense Management Department. And I have been actually part of this project for Adidas already for 11 years now, so quite a long time. Here out of Portugal, we support in our GBS 3 regions. It's Europe, North America, and Latin America. We are at the moment around 750 employees, and we cover 5 streams. So we have source to pay, order to cash, we have record to report, plan to report, and also hire to retire. On top of that, this is quite recent for us. We're also growing a tech community, which we are very proud of. We are located in Porto. It's the second largest city in Portugal. It's in the northern of Portugal. And one of the reasons why Porto was chosen by Adidas to locate their GBS here was clearly the talent pool. And also when we started, it was still, in terms of other shirts, in terms of competitors, there were not a lot yet. But I will come to that, to the talent pool and also the growth. First, I wanted to let you know a little bit more about the culture at Adidas. As a sports company, and I strongly believe that culture is the X factor why you want to work for Adidas. As a sports company, we obviously honor team spirit and collaboration, and very important for us is our people. So people are our number one priority, and it's our focus how they experience working for us. The cherry on top are the great facilities that Adidas has around the globe, all obviously with the look and feel of sports and Adidas. So you can see a few pictures of our building. We actually opened up a building just for us in 2020, so this was a huge milestone, and we are very proud of it. So we run basically out of space with the exponential growth we had in the last years. Besides that, the company's culture is best captured in our 3 C's, and you can see them on the screen: collaboration, creativity, and confidence. Confidence for us means that we don't have all the answers. We are willing to take risks, and if we fail, it's part of our learning. Having the ambition to be the best sports company in the world obviously takes a lot of creativity. So we have to be open to new ideas. We have to explore, we have to stand out. And then obviously the collaboration. So collaboration is about winning as one team, and it's very important. It's about being open and inclusive. So we have been putting a lot of focus into diversity and inclusiveness. We have currently at our center 40 different nationalities, employees from 40 different nationalities, what we are very proud of. One of our main drivers for keeping such a strong culture are our cultural ambassadors. It's entirely voluntary, so it's our employees that run this. It's entirely voluntary to be a cultural ambassador at GBS, and you can basically choose to which stream you want to belong. We have sports ambassadors, we have body and mind, we have social, we have events, and more even. And basically, it's a group of employees that organize events and initiatives, and this is one of the main drivers how we keep our employees engaged. Good. That was a little bit more like an introduction and actually telling you about who we are and what we do. But let's get to the growth. As I mentioned in the beginning, we are around 750 employees, so a little bit more than that at the moment. And this happened during the last decade. So we opened up in 2009. And we were not that ambitious since the beginning, not at all. So the initial plan when we opened up the office here in Porto was to cover only finance and only Europe. The ambition was around 50 employees in the end. So that was the target for our center. Our first big bang in terms of growth happened in 2016 when we incorporated North and South America. So until now, we had only Europe, and as you might imagine, that was quite a big step for us. It meant working with different time zones. We had employees working in different shifts, a lot of convincing business partners that this was possible, but it was definitely a success for us, so we made it possible. And in terms of growth, this meant for us that from one year to the other, we doubled in size. The next exponential growth that we had and was even more impactful, it put us in a totally different light, was when we moved from financial into being global. So 2018, we started to transition non-trade procurement, customer life cycle, controlling, and hire to retire. So we not only left Europe world, narrowed down to Europe, we also left the finance world. We became much more than that. And as I mentioned in the beginning as well, more recently, we are creating a tech community that is reporting globally into HQ. With all this growth, and that's why I'm here, that the person heading accounts payable for several years now, with all this growth, also accounts payable became bigger and bigger. Currently, we receive an average of 3,000 invoices per day. And here's actually where Apex comes into play. So like an athlete, also we as GBS, we need to review our game. And for several years now, Apex is identifying for us and recovering for us overpayments. It might be an accidental duplicate rebate missing, so different things that might have skipped our AP department. And we believe this is critical, especially in times of where we are growing as quickly as we are. And we as a leadership, we are much focused on quickly taking over more regions and more work streams. So details might skip our mind. Phil, maybe I hand over now to you.
Yeah, thanks for that, Cristiana, and certainly there at Adidas, you and your team have gone through a lot of change over the last decade. I've been fortunate enough to have a partnership with you all for quite some time, and so I've got to listen in and learn, and just really impressed with what all you all have done, taking this vision that was really centralized and rolling out to all these regions. So I know it's been a challenge, but congratulations, you all have done a great job. And so what I thought I would do is just take a few minutes and talk about change. And Cristiana, you talked about change in the form of, was actually very positive, as you all built out your shared services organization, rolled that out to other regions. That change is really a disruption, but it's a positive thing. In my world, in the recovery audit space, when I talk about change and I experience change, it's generally not as positive. And what I mean by that is when change occurs, and you all know this, but change can take many different forms. It can be in the form of rolling out a shared service center, which is a positive thing. Rolling out a new ERP or upgrading ERP, or maybe you have some mergers or acquisitions, or I don't know, onshore and offshore, just change in general in the recovery audit space. When that occurs, it creates a spike in overpayments. Generally, that is around duplicate payment, but it also creates a spike in outstanding credits. So the specific example that I want to walk through today, this is not Adidas. This is another one of our clients. So again, not Adidas, what I'm showing here, but it is one of our clients. And the specific spike that I'm going to show is related to our client rolling out a well-known e-invoicing platform. And so again, think about change, rolling out e-invoicing, very positive. I mean, we all know e-invoicing is a good thing, reduces manual processes, and many other advantages, but it is a change, a disruption. And in this specific scenario, I want to kind of give you two data points that I think you'll find of interest. During this e-invoicing rollout, and it was roughly a 4-month time period, there was a specific invoice that was paid 6 times. So a single invoice was paid 6 times during this rollout. And you all know this, but suppliers just want to be paid. And so when there's change occurring, in this example, rolling out e-invoicing, the supplier will do whatever is required. They'll send it the old way. They'll send it the new way. They'll pick up the phone and call. They'll send an email. They'll alter the invoice if that's what's required. And so it's just they want to be paid. And during this time of change and disruption, this specific scenario, an invoice was paid 6 times. Another data point I think you'll find very interesting is during this 4-month rollout of this e-invoicing platform, there was a 300% increase in overpayments. So just digest that for a second. 4 months, and we had a partnership with this client before they rolled this out, during the rollout, and after. But during that 4-month period, 300% increase in overpayments. And so, what's the point here? What's the big picture? The big picture is that change can be a good thing. And in Adidas's case, certainly a good thing. But it's so important that as you and your organization, you're going through any sort of change, that you have a recovery audit partner with you. Things there will absolutely be an increase, a spike in overpayments. I've been doing this for 17 years, and I can say with complete confidence that during my tenure, I've never seen a scenario where there wasn't a material change and there wasn't a spike. And the reasons that it's so important that you have this partnership with a recovery audit firm is, there are many, but I'll give you three. The first is, while you're going through this change, there's going to be a spike in overpayments. The longer that these duplicates or outstanding credits, the longer that they're off your books and they're sitting with the supplier, the higher likelihood is that they're going to be unrecoverable. So, maybe the supplier goes out of business, or maybe the supplier writes it off, or, that maybe they misapply it. In other words, they apply this duplicate payment to another outstanding invoice, which just creates a mess from a reconciliation standpoint. Another important reason to have a partner with you during this time is you want to recover it as quickly as possible, because there's a whole time value of money. I mean, you do not want your funds sitting on suppliers' books. You want that money on your books so that it can work for you. And then the last reason that it's important that you have a partner during this is when you want to recover funds as close to the transaction as possible. And so at Apex, we recommend, is generally industry best practice, that you stay no later than 90 days past the transaction to recover. And that's for duplicate payments and outstanding credits. And the reason for that, and arguably this is the most important piece, is the closer you are to the transaction, the higher likelihood it is that you get the feedback on exactly what caused the issue and you put a fix in place. And so an example of that would be, we have some clients where we're 6 months, a year, 18 months, 2 years behind the transaction performing a recovery audit. And although that's still a good thing, you want us to go get those funds for you, it's very difficult when we're recovering things that are 6, 8, 12, 18, 24 months old for us to explain to you why this occurred, and for you to put a change in place or put some change in place to maybe address the shortcoming, the process gap. The issue is, it's so old, maybe you've already put a change in place. Another reason for that to be so close to the transaction is, if we identify something that's 90 days old and it's a duplicate payment or an outstanding credit, we can tell you either in monthly or quarterly updates, this is the root cause. This is why the error occurred, right? Ultimately, there was change that occurred, but then there was a root cause of the specific error. You can put a fix in place, and we can validate that fix fairly quickly, versus we identify things that are really old, we explain to you what happened, we give you recommendations on fixing it, and then we don't test that for another year or 12 months. So in summary, change is inevitable. It's generally a good thing. In Adidas's case, that they're rolling out the shared service, change is a very positive thing. In recovery audit, it will create a spike in overpayment. So, if you hear nothing, I would strongly recommend that if you are going through change in your organization, regardless of what that is, that you have a recovery audit partner with you throughout that change, ideally before, during, and after. And so before, you establish a benchmark. During, obviously there's a lot of turbulence and things going on, and then afterwards, so you can measure against that benchmark to start with. So Cristiana, I'll turn it back over to you.
Yes, thank you very much, Phil. And thank you for all this collaboration during the last years. Definitely a help for us. Still related with change, not that much recovery audit, but it may have had an impact. I think it didn't, but you never know. But I was invited as well to speak a little bit about COVID-19 and how that impacted us, and that's definitely a change. So when the pandemic hit us, we fortunately had already a very solid business continuity plan in place. So it was put in place several years before any of us imagined that something like this could ever happen. We had several cold and warm tests. Every employee had a laptop. We had enough hotspots in case people would struggle with the internet connection. at home. So we had something very solid in place when it actually hit us. And this was the reason why we were able from one day to the other to send everybody home. So we switched from being remote, working remotely from one day to the other without any kind of business disruption. So something that luckily went very well for us. Right now, at this moment, so I'm in the office in the great building we opened up during the pandemic, so empty. But now it's getting fuller. So we still have people working from home, but we are bringing more and more people in. Portugal is quite advanced in terms of vaccination, what is a great thing for us, and the government is step by step releasing all the restrictions that were put in place before. So it's becoming busy here. At the same time, the company globally announced that we would, all employees would be allowed to have 2 days of home office, off campus, 3 days at the office, 2 we can stay home. It's really great for us as employees. We keep the benefits that all of us know from working from home, but also for Adidas and for our culture. And I spoke about that a lot in the beginning. We want to bring people back to the face-to-face meetings, to that collaboration, to that team spirit, winning as one team. And we do know the importance of having people actually on site. And obviously the great facilities. So that's also a point we cannot forget. We have great facilities and we want definitely people to use it. So that's right now our reality that was recently announced. And that's it from my side. So I think we have still a Q&A, right, Phil?
Yeah. Hey, this is Matthew. Hi, Cristiana. So please ask any questions in the chat and we'll get to them. I have a couple questions here. Cristiana, one thing I was thinking about was culture is so important to Shared Services Center. And how, during COVID, it's been 18 months, how did you have kind of sustain your culture with everyone separated? Because it's such a core component about your Shared Services Center. You know, what were some of the activities that you did that maybe our team and other teams can steal from?
Yeah. Yes, it definitely is. And when I say number one priority are people and the culture, I'm really not lying. Even if you look at surveys about our employees' satisfaction here at the center, it's always very high. And one of the highlights is team spirit and the culture and work environment. So you can, and these are consistent. We do it for years now, the employee satisfaction surveys, and these show always up as top 3. So you definitely understand that it is a big deal. When we all went home, I think we all had the same concerns, everybody around the world. So how do we keep people engaged? How do we motivate people? And how do we watch out for those that might be not feeling well? It was a lot on our leads, so our team leads that are the closest to the teams. You know, shared services have big teams. So our team leaders, our managers, we spoke many times to them for them to be watchful for somebody that might be not feeling well and take actually one-to-ones and let them off the hook, obviously. And it was a lot on the cultural ambassadors, to be honest. So I talked about them. They existed before. But what we did, and they did such an amazing job. Almost every week, almost every day, but every week there was something new they invented to keep people motivated and engaged. And it was, I don't know, Halloween day and photographs for this or that. I remember I did an all-employee meeting virtually with my boss in pajamas. So that's how far they went. I will never forget that. And they did tons of things to keep people engaged. So it was a lot around pictures or doing things online. And then the other approach was like everybody had. So a lot of one-to-ones and check-ins with the whole team, like in the morning. And when you finish your day, so how are you all? How is it going? Because you cannot do it physically. And I believe that was like the first big part of the pandemic, like the first year. what happened to us, and I strongly believe it happened to more people, to more companies, is that we then went into a second phase, more fatigue. So everybody started to get very, very tired of Teams, tired of having only virtual meetings, tired of the ringing, the tone of the ringing. Even that would irritate you already. So, and there we had a totally different approach. So first it was out of our hands. So pandemic kept going. That we as leaders, we cannot change that. We had to keep staying home, but we went right away. The senior leadership went to our leaders and said, decrease the meetings, decrease the teams, give people time to just work, let them have the camera off. There were articles about especially women, and I'm sorry, I want to be diverse, but there were articles especially about women seeing themselves constantly on the camera. So this was like a second phase where it got a little bit, so it's now really, really hard to engage people, but let's decrease the meetings, the online, the virtual, the teams. So it was a little bit like that.
No, that's great. We had something similar. We started out and we had morning meetings every day, and now it's gone to like twice a week, maybe even once a week, because it is fatiguing. But Phil, I got a question. Just piggybacking on that, when are you having a pajama party with your kids?
Yeah, I think we're going to pass on the pajama party.
Oh, it sounds good. It sounds good.
Halloween is coming up, though. That is a good idea. So, Cristiana, I've got that written down. We're going to do some sort of Halloween team meeting and see how creative people get with their costumes.
I'm holding you to it.
I'm going to show up with hair. It's going to be great.
Oh, gosh. So, Cristiana, you guys had really explosive growth. And right now in the U.S., we have kind of a issue hiring people. There's a lot of open positions. When I go on LinkedIn every day, there's open positions in procurement, shared services, AP, just constantly being posted. Since you were hiring a lot during growth pre and during COVID, any tips on how some of these leaders that are watching can help in, taking some ideas from your hiring practices?
I think we are quite in a lucky position. So in terms of talent pool, the city was chosen very wisely. We have a very strong talent pool. We have a lot of universities, and Porto people are good at what they do. And our hiring has a lot as well. We have a lot of employees coming from the northern cities of Porto that are a little bit smaller, but the commuting is not that long. So we have 60% of our employees come from those smaller cities. We are just in the northern beginning of Porto, so it's really easy to access. We didn't see too much difference between hiring now during COVID and before. What we saw is that we actually had people applying and also being chosen from other cities like Lisbon, what is what is 3 hours distance from here. So now we obviously are very attentive of what is going to happen when we start bringing people back. So are people now actually moving? Because during the pandemic, and nobody still knows when it's going to end. So it's like such a faraway decision that you don't even think about it. So I can work for Adidas, that is a great brand. I want to work there, but I stay in Lisbon with my family. So what's going to happen now? That's something that we are very watchful on. In terms of practices, as I said, we have a good talent pool. We are very lucky. In terms of practices is LinkedIn, obviously, and we are a fun brand. It obviously helps us. We have a lot of colorful pictures related with sports, so a lot on LinkedIn to have have more visibility. We, as a shared service, we also have very junior people, so we go to universities. We introduce to them the concept. We are there on fairs when with the ones that are finishing their degree. We explain them what we do, so we invite them. We tell them how they can apply if they want to. So these are a few of the things that we do.
Yeah, that must have been a part of the decision to open the Shared Services Center in that city, located next to those universities.
Yes.
Yeah. Phil, question for you, or do you want
I just had a quick question for Cristiana. Cristiana, I know that you all are going to be transitioning to this hybrid model. And this is something that, I've had dozens of conversations about this over the last 2 or 3 months with shared services leaders saying, hey, Phil, what are you hearing from other organizations about going back to work and the hybrid model? And I say the consensus is most have ambitions of getting back into the office, whether they're already there or they're thinking more the first of the year. And most are also looking at a hybrid model. So at least initially, a few days mandatory, a few days at home, and the few days mandatory are consistent. That way it creates some camaraderie and some collaboration. But these conversations always seem to get to, well, boy, what sort of challenges are we going to face once we get to this hybrid model? So, thinking back to March of 2020, you all were great. You had contingencies in plan, contingent place in plan. You had done some warm and cold testing. Most organizations didn't have laptops for everyone. And so that transition back in March was a huge disruption. And we, in the recovery audit space, we saw a material spike, really from kind of March through late summer. Now we're going to be going back. And so, do you foresee issues with things like something as simple as I forgot my computer, right? Because it's, when you're at home, well, you're at home. When you're at work, you're at work. When you're in hybrid, it's back and forth. So, I forgot my computer, or hey, now that we're back in the office, are we going to go back to processing manual checks? Or maybe not such a big deal there. But do you foresee what challenges do you foresee surfacing during the hybrid model versus being just at home or just in the office?
To be honest, and not too many, not at least when it gets to performance and business critical issues. We are focusing a lot on the emotional part. We don't see any business disruption in actually having people back here. There may be companies, obviously, that might struggle with facilities if they had a smaller building and they grew while everybody was home. So most probably now, if they ask everybody to come back to the office, they may run out of space. It's also not our case. In terms of if a laptop is forgotten, I didn't hear about it yet since we are coming back, but it may obviously. I don't expect a business disruption. You can still go home and work that day from home. If it happened to you, you can quickly go home and grab it. So we are focusing much more on the emotional part of people wanting to come home, because we do see, or we do believe, great part wants to come home. Obviously, they keep the benefit of having those 2 days, the hybrid model, but the majority wants to come back to the office. But we do know there are still people that would prefer to stay. Either they are still afraid, or they just get used to, or they got rid of their apartment in the city. They are back to their parents' home, what is quite a huge commuting or impossible commuting. So things like that. We are more focusing our change management on that than actually being concerned about something business critical, some business disruption of having people back here. So we are not expecting that.
Good, great.
So just going back to growth, and you onboarded different processes and regions. Is there an order like thinking about adding in procure to pay, order to cash, is there an order that you'd recommend in adding in those different processes into the shared services center?
I don't know if I would be in a position to recommend something. I know from our experience and I know that's usually the step you take. So you start with the finance part. The finance piece is usually easy, never, but easier to move into a shared service environment before you go actually into functions that are call it things like customer service or non-trade procurement. So we are not talking about administrative tasks anymore. So usually that's the step you take. You start first by things that are the so-called back office, and then you take a second step, a bigger step, and you go into a different direction. So that's usually the trend you see, because you have already something to build on. You have something stable. You have leaders. You have teams. You have people that you can create new mixed teams out of people that were already a part of the GBS plus new hiring. So that makes it much easier to then get into more complex and more difficult projects.
Great. You mentioned a tech community that Adidas has in the city. Can you just expand on that? Are you hosting, or maybe were you hosting any kind of events for people to participate?
No, when we say tech community, we have now purely tech positions sitting here at the center. They don't report into GBS. They are not GBS functions. They report into HQ globally, but the location chosen was Porto, or is being Porto more and more. So we have more and more functions like these sitting here with us. So we are moving from Adidas GBS Porto to Adidas Porto. So we are becoming bigger than only GBS.
Oh, great. Phil, just a quick question. I wanted you to kind of expand, talk a little bit about First Strike. And we use it for audit, but it's something that can be utilized by companies to prevent overpayments. Could you just give a quick synopsis of First Strike for anyone on the session right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So as Matthew was saying, we have technology that we built internally called First Strike. And the module specific that Matthew is referring to is our duplicate prevention module, which was in our controls module. And essentially what that does is it receives a daily feed of all new and updated transactions from an ERP. It's loaded into the tool on a nightly basis. Analysis is run against those new transactions, comparing them to historical data and identifying potential duplicate payments. And the reason this is so valuable is it's identifying them before the actual duplicate is ever made. And so what it does, it gives our clients an opportunity to come in each morning, pull up the workbench and review these potential duplicates, and in the event that it is indeed a duplicate payment, to stop the payment from going out the door. Now, I'm not naive. I know that all ERPs inherently have duplicate payment controls built in. I'm also very keen to know that most of these ERP systems, that's not their core competency to prevent duplicate payments. And I know, Cristiana, you guys are an SAP shop, and not talking specifically about Adidas, but SAP in general, they do not do a good job against protecting against duplicate payments. And so, the reason is that there's very specific match process that has to be followed in SAP. And so there's just not a lot of flexibility. And the challenge with that is, and a great example was the case study I gave with our client that was implementing the e-invoicing. I mean, they had an invoice that was paid 6 times. And so, the reason that occurred is, one, the supplier got creative, tried to send it in multiple different ways, but they also altered various things within the actual invoice. And SAP specifically, you go in and alter the invoice number, append something to the end. It will not catch that. And the challenge, and the reason is you could likely tighten it down tight enough, but then certainly you wouldn't get through your payment runs. And so there's just many scenarios. I feel like I'm picking on SAP. I don't mean to, but it's a great example, great ERP, but it's not great at preventing duplicate payments. So first strike clients that, typically the way it works is we do a historical recovery audit, and we identify, do you have a large amount of exposure around duplicate payments? And if so, then we can put first strike in place to prevent that. Now, we still will come behind you and do a recovery audit because we want to make sure that you're using it properly and it helps with tuning. But generally what we see is, if you think about that kind of before, during, and after, which I talked about earlier with change, clients that had duplicate issues before, we put first strike in place. We come behind them because you always want to measure against that. And during our normal recovery audit, if before there were $1 million, $2 million, $3 million in exposure, we may find 2 or 3 duplicates when we come behind our clients. And generally those are just it's just a mistake. I were reviewing the duplicates. I didn't think it was. I said it was, and our auditors came behind and said, yes, it was. So it's just, it's a very progressive step forward for clients that just want to absolutely stop duplicates from going out the door.
So we are hitting our time, and instead of trying to fit in the last question, put Cristiana or Phil on the spot, I'll give everyone a minute back. They can go have a coffee, get prepped for the next session. Cristiana, thank you very much for walking through the growth at Adidas. I'm sure many people will reach out to you afterwards. And Phil, thank you for telling us a little bit more about the problems that we're seeing at Apex with regards to change. So I think we'll hand it back to the GPO team. Thank you very much for attending the session.
Thank you very much for the invite. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Well, thank you, Cristiana. Thank you, Phil. And thank you, Matt, for a very engaging conversation that walked through the journey of Adidas and talked about, some of the challenges within the AP process. One thing, Cristiana, looking at you're based in Porto, the next big shared services event next year, we will return to Lisbon. So hopefully we'll see the team there. So thanks again. Absolutely. Have a lovely day. And for those of you who are online with us, so this is the last session for this time block. As you can see on your screen, our next session will start at 14:15 CET time and 1:15 UK time if you're UK based, and it will be on a different link. So we'll see you there in 15 minutes on the other link. Thanks again.